Hey there, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. I got my new glasses back. They've been JB welded together, so I expect I'm going to be a little better on my reading. All right, let's begin. We're at chapter 27. No reason to dilly-dally. Let's read it. Oh, one second. We got dilly-dally for one thing. Okay. Boast not thyself of tomorrow, for thou knowest not what a day may bring forth. Let another man praise thee, and not thine own mouth, a stranger, and not thine own lips. A stone is heavy, and the sand weighty, but a fool's wrath is heavier than them both. Wrath is cruel, and anger is outrageous, but who is able to stand before envy? Open rebuke is better than secret love. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. The full soul loatheth an honeycomb, but to the hungry soul, every bitter thing is sweet. As a bird that wandereth from her nest, so is a man that wandereth from his place. Ointment and perfume rejoice the heart. So doth the sweetness of man's friend by hearty counsel. Of a man's friend, okay. Ointment and perfume rejoice the heart. So doth the sweetness of a man's friend by hearty counsel. Thine own friend and thy father's friend forsake not, neither go into thy brother's house in the day of thy calamity. For better is a neighbor that is near than a brother far off. My son, be wise, and make my heart glad, that I may answer him that reproacheth me. A prudent man foreseeth the evil, and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. I just didn't enunciate. Take his garment that is surety for a stranger, and take a pledge of him for a strange woman. He that blesseth his friends with a loud voice, rising early in the morning, it shall be counted a curse to him. A continual dropping in a very rainy day, and a continual dropping in a very rainy day, and a contentious woman are alike. Whosoever hideth her hideth the wind, and the ointment of his right hand, which bewrayeth itself. Look at that. Iron sharpeneth iron, so a man sharpeneth the countenance of his friend. Whoso keepeth the fig tree shall eat the fruit thereof, so he that waiteth on his master shall be honored. That's close to a parable of the fig tree, right? As in water face answereth to face, so the heart of man to man. Have to investigate that. Hell and destruction are never full, so the eyes of man are never satisfied. As the fining pot for silver, and the furnace for gold, so is a man to his praise. Though thou shouldest bray a fool in a mortar among wheat with a pestle, yet will not his foolishness depart from him. That's an interesting analogy. Be thou diligent to know the state of thy flocks, and look well to thy herds, for riches are not forever, and doth the crown endure to every generation? Question. The hay appeareth, and the tender grass showeth itself, and the herbs of the mountains are gathered. The lambs are for thy clothing, and the goats are the price of the field. And thou shalt have goat's milk enough for thy food, for the food of thy household, and for the maintenance of thy maidens. Interesting. Some of those in there are kind of dark, hard to say what they mean, right? We'll see if we can figure them out. And that may just be a translation issue, or there are genuinely difficult to understand sayings. Because remember, wisdom is complicated. It's not simple, you know. Though there can be a simplicity and elegance to it. You know what I mean, in that sense, that it makes your life simpler to follow the path of wisdom. The fool has many complicated paths he goes down because his simple-mindedness leads him into foolishness. Don't be simple-minded. Boast not yourself of tomorrow. Tomorrow is what we're going to do. This thing I try to nick on myself. Jesus said it himself. Sufficient to the day is the evil thereof. That used to be a dark saying to me because I couldn't understand what he meant. I was like, huh? But I hadn't lived enough life yet to understand what he meant. Every day is filled with enough trouble so that we, the plans for the future. I certainly, there's nothing wrong with planning for the future. Of course, you have to some degree. But you don't want to make your boast about it because you don't know what's coming. You don't want to go overly bored. You don't want to go overboard in assuming things are going to go the way you plan. It's disrespectful to the Lord in a certain sense because you should be, as a Christian, we should be deferential to the Lord. Thy will be done. And that comes out in the New Testament. Was it James who talked about that, where he said, he quoted from this proverb. Jesus and James was who I believe was the brother of Jesus. They seem to be very, very much the wisdom of Solomon. It permeates a lot of the teachings of Jesus and of his brother. Boast not thyself tomorrow. You know not what a day may bring forth. That's happened. We're going. No, and I tell you what, I get caught off guard sometimes. But this Sunday, we had a wrestling tournament to go to, and it was freezing cold out in the morning, and I was kind of whatever. There was a couple things went wrong already, and then I found out I had a flat tire, and I had to take a car I wasn't intending to take because the windshield wipers weren't working, and it had a bashed out tail light and all that stuff, and I had to travel about 40 miles. Took it anyways, but at the moment it was very frustrating. And I forgot my mind, which is always to be ready to just not go. We've planned something for the next day. We'll be ready to cancel plans. Mentally, I kind of have to prepare myself because I don't like changes of plans. I don't like it. I like to make plans and keep them. That's just my nature, my thing, and it's something it can lead me to sin, obviously, if because I'm not, not liking to change is definitely one of those things Jesus talked about with the old wineskins. For me, it's more a matter of, plans and stuff like that. I don't like to, if we were going to do one thing, I don't like to, I got all my mind all ready and I got myself organized and prepared to do something. Like if we were going to do something, I kind of order my day accordingly. And then it's just, sometimes, canceling plans is one thing, but changing them. Anyways, we don't know what the day may bring. So we have to have the mindset of patience to understand that we have to wait to see what the day brings to really know what we're going to do and to not set our hearts on the future that we have no control over. As Jesus said, you can't add 1 inch to your stature or make one hair of your head black or white. Not from the root, you can dye them, but you know what he means. You can't grow it out the way you want. You can't change anything about the natural process of your life. Not without going unnatural, and that doesn't count. It's like, what he's saying is you can't do nothing about it. Not by your own power, anyways. And even so, would you wrestle even against God? When he says no. That's a lesson I learned a long time ago. I have had a number. Yesterday I was very irritated at the flat tire and also finding other things broken. It was freezing cold. It was just a miserable moment in my life. So I was a bit out of my, let's call it my placid zone. But there have been times when I took the fact that, I do take it in stride that being late sometimes or being delayed by circumstances, I'm like, I could have just missed getting T-boned, when someone plows into your car. I might have had an appointment with destiny that God decided to cancel for me if I left when I intended to go. Sometimes we don't know. Just like Balaam's ass. Balaam's like, let's go. And the ass is like, no, there's an angel with a sword and he's going to kill you, dude. Until the God gave him the ability to speak. I like when people say, oh, how could the ass speak? I'm like, telepathically, probably, right? He doesn't have the parts of the mouth to talk. But even if a voice came out of it, it's no different than ventriloquism necessarily. It doesn't mean the ass can only say what it feels. He gives it a voice. It's a miracle. That's why those things, if they were normal, they'd happen all the time. There's another great piece of advice. Let another man praise you. Don't be the one boasting yourself. It's much better to have other people saying how, if you're good at something. When you make your boast of yourself, it just, people do it, And maybe in school kids get impressed. I don't know. By the time I remember being a teenager, kids that were mouthy about how great they were, we all had our own opinion of what you are. So you don't get to just reassign that. I remember when I was in kindergarten, there was a little boy who was like, "My name is Kevin, and I'm the strongest little boy in the world." And by high school, he was definitely not. He was in a rough shape, that kid. I hope things went better for him afterwards, because some kids took advantage of him and stuff. But what I'm saying is, he was trying to boost himself way above where he was going. He didn't know how to use the bathroom. I remember he left the door open, and while he's sitting there going, he didn't have proper boundaries. And I realized later why. It was because, his parents were handicapped, and they didn't really have, they were deaf. Imagine a baby crying and no one can hear it. So that's rough. And so there's got to be some developmental issues, in that. And not that, I'm glad that no deaf people will hear me saying that, but they could read my lips or read a transcript, I suppose. But anyways, it is, it's good to have one parent that can hear. I think you'd agree with that, right? Sometimes it's very romantic when two people with the same disability come together, right? We're both blind. Hey, God bless you. But also, it might be easier to raise a kid if one of you wasn't. Just saying. I love the fact that, I thank God all the time I have the use of my eyes, my ears, everything. My Lord, I don't know what I would do without it. I'm really impressed by people who do so much without the use of their senses, all of them anyways, right? Yeah, it's not good to praise yourself. And if someone else praises you, people take that more seriously. That reminds me of the time when I was, these girls accosted me in the parking lot, and they wanted me to back up their story about whatever they were trying to sell to people. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. Because they want someone else's testimony. I look like a respectable older gentleman, maybe not a gentleman. I look like a respectable older laborer or something. I asked this guy, guess what I do? First thing he guessed was mechanic. I'm like, I do a lot of things like that, but I'm not a mechanic. Nope. No, sir. A stone is heavy and the sand weighty, but a fool's wrath is heavier than both. Because a wise man in his wrath can temper his wrath. He'll see the complexity of the situation. He'll see himself losing control and realize that wrath does not befit the wise. Not to be given to it anyways. Be angry and sin not. There is a use for anger and a fierce countenance, no doubt. I mean, sometimes I'll make, when I'm preaching and stuff, like when I read Amos, when I'm channeling God's feelings about the prophecies, it's like, yeah, you get angry. Also, I just uploaded a new a new reading. Romans 1 and 2 is up on my Bible reading channel, and I've got more I'm working on. You can wait till the book is done if you want, of course, if you're interested. Anyways, but it's there. All right. But a stone is heavy, sand weighty, but fool's wrath is heavier than both, because it doesn't proceed according to wisdom. Even someone who's, not maybe as wise in the sense of God, but wise like the serpent, or wise in their own zone, so to speak, meaning something that's not particularly, I don't know. When you're talking about wrath, it's always a moral issue. He's taking a fool will take offense when none is given. A fool will take, he'll be angry when he ought not. That's the treachery of the foolishness. You ever felt foolish after being angry? And think about what, I think about what my wrath would do to my families when I'm wrong. I'm glad I haven't been wrong that many times. There's been a few times where I was in the wrong, sure. But I've always said, my wife, it's funny, she came from a family that was very much quiet and not a lot of yelling and stuff. In my family, there was a lot of, it was rowdy. And you can probably get from my personality the kind of home I grew up in. As far as, it was Italians. And, so it was a bit of loudness. My mom wasn't Italian, but she kind of liked the loud, big family thing because she was an only child. And she was a bit of a loudmouth herself. But in those, why is it? Oh, yeah. That's cool. What was I saying about that? Oh, she was raised that way. But, yeah, there have been times, I just wanted to say my wrath is not all that. It's mostly all steam. You know, I mean, it's all just noise and fury with no meaning or consequence. Meaning, like, I don't go fly off the handle, start hitting my kids or my wife. Obviously, don't do that. That's where you really, be angry and sin not. One of the ways you sin when you're angry is you strike other people. No striker. That's what it says. No striker. You can't be someone who lashes out violently at people when you get angry. That you've got to get under control. Because you can't be a leader in the church if you're like that. You got to be at least that controlled. Got to get control of your fists. I remember being really angry at the bank. I told them off and I said, I'll be back tomorrow to withdraw all my money. And then they called me and apologized. There's nothing, like I said, be angry and sin not. Sometimes you just sternly tell people what's what. You don't have to be a doormat for everything. You have to let the machines roll over you. You don't owe those things anything. The machinery of the banks, the machinery of the government, the machinery of the machines, the AI, whatever else is coming. I mean, the systems of oppression, the principalities and powers, the rulers of the darkness of the world. I don't mean Biden. He's not the ruler of the darkness of this world. He's a joke. He's just a little puppet dangling from a string, all limp and useless. It makes me think I got some marionettes, but they're junky marionettes from Mexico. They're barely hanging on anymore, right? I mean, I like the junky little marionettes. They're cute little artisanal things. But they're not greatly put together. That's what makes me think of Joe Biden. Just a decrepit, falling apart, poorly made thing sold for $5 at the border. I remember that's one time I went to another country. I went to Mexico and we went to the shop and I bought a little puppet. Couldn't get anything like that in the States because, whatever, they don't make cheap crafts here. Maybe they do. Maybe somebody brought the marionette business up to America by now. I don't know. Stone is heavy, fool's wrath. Wrath is cruel, anger is outrageous, but who is able to stand before envy? Yeah, because when you put in that extra element, someone could be, if someone's angry for some straight up reason, like, it's not quite the same when envy is brought into play. Because that gets into personal hatred. A lot of times anger and wrath is actually not personal. It's just like the situation, right? It can be completely different. What is cruel and outrageous? I just want to know what these adjectives mean. Or is that an adverb there? No. It's just a predicate adjective, right? Something like that, because it is referring back to wrath, not to is. It would have to be is cruelly done. That would be an adjective. All right. So stone is heavy, sand weighty, wrathful, cruel. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't bring you over with me. Well, I'll remedy that right now. Here we go. All right. So now I need to be there too. Okay, now I am. Stone is heavy, sand weighty, wrath is cruel. That's a big word. I'm just going to bring that over. Outrageous. All right. Cruelty. Let's look at the phonetic pronunciation. Akziriuth. Say that 3 times fast. From akzar, which is a lot easier to say. Cruelty. That sounds like a cruel word, doesn't it? Akzar. Cruel, fierce. Outrageous. This is one I was more interested because, I don't know. Outrageous is kind of a loaded word now in English. A flood. So probably meant a figurative sense, like overflowing. Okay. It means literally a flood. So here it obviously means in a sort of a figurative sense. No doubt. And they went outrageous. Anger is a flood. And that is a wonderful... Actually, they should have... See, here's one thing. King James interpreted this. It's one of those times when it's like, actually, no. New American Standard, and, that's not the NIV, though. New American Standard is a little more of a translation. But flood is the literal translation here. Outrageous is that's an interpretation of the metaphor of the flood. That a flood... But they shouldn't have done that. I find that that's one area where I would say King James didn't drop the ball. It's my favorite translation. This is not a good choice here. Because it would help you connect the idea of Satan's casting that flood out of his mouth. I mean, he was wroth with the woman, right? And then he casts a flood out of his mouth. And here it is. Anger is a flood. Not that it gives you much more insight into that, but it's another, it's like reinforces that motif. Like I said, there's a lot of prophetic motifs, I've said this in the past, that get reiterated into the New Testament. That's why I was like, well, if I said this to a friend, I said, well, if Ezekiel 28 isn't if Isaiah 14 is only about the king of Babylon, then what was Paul talking about in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 when he basically quotes, you can tell he's drawing it all from Isaiah. Not entirely from Isaiah, but what I mean is like all the thoughts from Isaiah are still in his mind. He is not making new things up. These are known prophetic ideas from the Old Testament. All right. Who's able to stand before envy? So envy is, I think the idea is it's more personal. Should I have looked at the word envy? Is there anything special we haven't encountered before? I'm going to look. Ardor, zeal, jealousy. Because it can also be in a positive sense. That would be ardor. From an unused word. Yeah. It's an assertion of that. Like I said, the envy is more personal. I think that's what makes it worse. Like when their anger is not just directed at something done, but at the person. I think that may be what it means. I don't know. Because otherwise, it is not wrath. Envy. I don't know. He's right. So open rebuke is better than secret love. Yep, that's for sure. Being loved secretly doesn't ever help anybody. I love you, but I'm going to keep it a big secret. Even you won't know. And not only that, I'm not going to do anything to show it. I'm just going to keep it a total secret. Well, that's worthless. Thanks. Thanks for your admiration. It's like, eat and be filled, right? Eat and be filled. Well, if you know what I mean, I'm referring to the place in James where he says, you tell people to eat and be filled, but you don't give them the things they need to be filled. Well, that's not, you got to do that first. You can't just neglect the physical to be like, oh, it's got to be all spiritual. That's one of well, whatever. That is one area of people where they go into error is they just go into just like, well, it's all spiritual. Like they want, only that stuff matters. That nothing on the ground does. Well, it matters. What we do and how we conduct ourselves in this life matters. That's what Jesus said, occupy till I come, and he gave talents. He gave gifts to men. And those of us with them need to find them and learn how to use them. Whatever they be. It's not always the same. I always feel bad because I'm sitting up here with an obvious thing you do which is talk about the Word of God. But studying it and becoming well-versed in it is the beginning. I didn't start off being able to talk about the Bible because I didn't know anything. I couldn't even read the Bible. I literally could not read, especially the King James. I went into the book of Isaiah. I was reading in my Living Bible, which was the book. I had the Living Bible and I had the King James Bible. And I tried to read Isaiah in the King James and in the Living Bible, and I couldn't make heads or tails of it. The ox knows his master, and the ass his master's crib, but Israel doth know, my people doth not consider. I didn't know what he was talking about. I didn't know. What does that even mean? And it seems obvious to me now, but back then it was not. Because I had no historical background in the Bible. I had no, all I knew about was Jesus, really. And maybe the story of David and Solomon, a little Old Testament stuff. Sure, I knew about Moses and Genesis and the Exodus and the story of Joshua. I knew all that stuff. And that was easier reading for me. In fact, I went back and at that time, instead of reading Isaiah, I reread Samuel and those books that I read as a child. But now I read as an adult. And then I began studying and learning. And when we, it's like I said about my child, and the Lord made very similar thing. He said very similar things about God. That by our, when he did the parable of the man, whatever, who goes to his friend at night, who has a traveler coming, and he knocks on his door and he says, please, I need something. I have a traveler come at night. I need you to open the door to me and help me out here, whatever. I forgot the exact circumstances. And what Jesus said is, though he won't do it because he's his friend, he will do it because of importunity, because he won't stop knocking. He doesn't get up because, oh, my friend. He gets up because, the noise got me up, not the friend. And he said similar things about God, that pester God. He wants you to pester him. He does, because it makes him understand how badly you want things. When I badly want something, I cry out to God day and night. All right? Until you get it. Especially important things. I do think the spiritual things are the most important things, of course. That we should, that our lives would adhere to the morality that Jesus taught, that we would be upright in our dealings with other men. Things we are expected to do as representatives of Christ. Not to be saved, but because we're saved. Because you're saved, you have an opportunity to show people better. Open rebuke is better than secret love. We talked about, it's pretty obvious. It's, being told your errors is much better than, and being told good things about you, praise, is not necessarily bad. It can be bad if you let it get to your head. If it's, there's a lot of ways in which praise can turn into flattery, even in your own mind. Meaning, people may just say some generally nice things about you, but you get overwrought about it because a couple people said a few nice things. Me personally, whenever people say nice things, I always feel like, what are they going to find? They're going to find that thing that's going to make them. But I can't be mindful of it. I don't worry about praise or rebuke. I take very. I always like to be open to listen and consider. When someone's telling me I'm doing something wrong, I always take the time to listen. Now, sometimes it's an issue that I've already been over a long time, and unless they have new information, like if someone comes to me with the same old about like some Trinitarian denial, or just something I've heard before that's like, I'm not going to be particularly moved by that. Someone came with something, especially on a doctrine that's more, let's say, less at the center of our faith than the nature of God, who is Jesus Christ. There are other things that are not so close to the center of that, such as what's the millennium going to be like? And I've certainly got an open mindset in that, because I got to be open to it until it comes, because I don't really know what the Lord's going to do. We see some very general things and some very specific things that seem, I look at them as general prophecies, as like metaphorical, like the child putting his hand on the asp and all that, and the hole of the asp, the wolf with the lamb and all that, the peace brought. It could be literal, of course, but also it's a metaphor for peace. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. Yeah. So that's a different thing. It's similar to this previous one, right? Secret love is not the kisses of an enemy. Kiss of an enemy is a deceit. They don't really love you. It's like, oh, do you secretly love me? Don't be deceived. And, that's a good analogy, the kisses of an enemy, because a lot of what the enemy tempts us with is like a kiss. It's seductive. Kisses feel good. Everybody likes a kiss. Most people do. I don't know. It feels like you feel affirmed and warm, when someone gives you a kiss for something, it feels like you're appreciated. A lot of things, right? But an enemy, that feeling is treacherous, because it's not backed up by any actual, they wish you ill. And a friend may offend you in some way. I say offend, but that's not really the right word, probably. You may take offense at the words of a friend, but don't, if they're faithful. Sometimes friends can, I don't know. When a friend is critical, we should definitely listen and trust that they are our friends, if they have been. Especially because it's criticism. A friend will praise you sometimes just to help you out because you're his friend. They'll say good things about you when you're feeling down. That's not a bad thing necessarily. But it's not as good. I think open rebuke is better than open love. Though, I don't know, it doesn't feel quite as good. He doesn't say that. So open rebuke is definitely better than secret love. Whether it's better than open love, open love includes open rebuke. That's what I would say. If someone openly loves you, they're not going to only have good things to say, you know? Especially if you yourself. Now, my wife, I think about, I was like, oh, Katie doesn't really say much negative stuff about my problems. That's because I'm continually acknowledging them. If I'm acknowledging the problems, she didn't have to rebuke me. I'm rebuking myself. I require rebuke if I start acting like it's not a problem. I think that's why we've had a good marriage, is because there's nothing I've ever done that I haven't acknowledged as a problem. You know, I can't think of anything that gives her offense that I haven't acknowledged as a problem. You know? And there are probably things that she finds not problematic that I want to correct myself. That mostly gets down into things that go beyond sin, I suppose, into just, I don't know, what you describe that level at. You know, that perfection that where it's like, well, it's not that you did wrong, it's just you didn't do the best, you didn't get the ultimate. You didn't get to the peak of performance, the peak. I do seek that kind of perfection. I do seek that glory. You know, just listen to Romans 2. We're supposed to seek for glory and immortality. I want true glory. And so I don't seek the glory that comes from men. I want the glory that comes from God. I want God to be pleased with me. That's the fact that that's even possible, that shouldn't be possible, actually. It's only possible because of Christ's blood. Otherwise, I'd never be able to amass enough. There's never any way you're going to fix your sins by doing good works. God doesn't accept it. It's not how it works. You don't balance things out like that. People want life to work that way. But you got to understand, in God's, in the future, the new heavens that he wants to make, you know, you can't have unrighteousness. Not even a little. Not even one. Because it ruins it for everybody. We have to be like him, or we just can't be. You know, we can't be part of his world. If we can't submit to that, then we can't be part of it. You know? And that's what faith in Christ is part of. It's submitting to his lordship. You acknowledge that he is Lord. You know? Now you're under grace. You don't have to worry about works and all that. You just gotta, do them. But I wouldn't worry about them as far as salvation. Just do what God calls you to. Embark on the adventure with Christ. You know, he's called you to something glorious. So seek it out. Faith, Father, wounds our friend. Okay. The full soul loatheth an honeycomb, but to the hungry every bitter thing is sweet. I get that. You know, I used to eat a lot more at every sitting, but then I damaged my stomach abusing over-the-counter painkillers like Aleve and stuff. And then, and so then that caused me to fill up faster. And boy, I've encountered a lot of times where I have to push myself away from the plate. Like I can't even take it. Sometimes I look at pork sausages and want to puke. I mean, just the smell of them. Again, mostly because, like I said, I feel more full than I really am often. But when you're hungry, and genuinely hungry, man, this isn't it just like almost anything. I mean, we're probably a bit spoiled, right? But because we can get to so much good, tasty food. But if you've ever been really hungry, and I can't say the most hungry I've ever been was after fasting a period of time. I forgot if it was 5 days or something like that. And I wasn't that hungry. Because like I said, I'm not on, if I was on starvation rations before I started actually fasting and starving or whatever, then I suppose my body would have already been wasted away, and I could, you know, you can starve to death very quickly. But also, I don't know, it depends on your reserves, I guess, to some degree. I don't know. There was a very fat man who fasted for like a year and was basically fine. He lost a lot of weight. I wouldn't recommend that, by the way, but I forgot what his name was and what the circumstances were, but it was a documented case. So it was a couple hundred pounds, and then maybe 300-400 pounds, and he lost like a lot of it from the fasting for a long time, but otherwise seemed to be okay. I mean, because you do have a lot of energy to burn. Your body can take the molecules in your body and break them down. You just got to make sure you get enough hydration if you lose water. And we do need to eat. But it's far more important that every word that cometh out of the mouth of God. Man does not live by bread alone. That's why it's good to fast. It is good to fast because we remind ourselves of that fact. I mean, where we forego bread and live by the word of God. And I always feel like I draw closer to God when I fast because I'm denying. It's a way to take control of your body and to keep your body under. It's good practice. You learn to deny it, something that it lusts after, and legitimately so. It wants to eat. It's hungry. Your body sends you signals. It needs nutrition. And that's not even necessarily a bad thing or sinful to fulfill those desires. At least to the sense of, to moderation. So I wonder if this is, here, what makes me interested now, I want to look at this in a different sense, like spiritually. The full soul. Now he means soul, does it mean spiritually? Well, it doesn't say spirit, it says soul. Soul usually means the self. In that sense, meaning when they would, I remember Omar used to say when they go up in the airplane, he would say 8 souls on board, referring to the number of people. Souls. But anyways, when you're full, and the soulish man is also considered like the selfish man, the inward looking man. The soul loatheth in the honeycomb, the full soul. And I remember, it does not desire, sweetness. To me, like it says, now this is a bit off, but I want to explore this anyways, just as a thought, okay, just for whatever, because there are related topics, and we can always take this in a different direction. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think about when it says, I was thinking first of the bitter belly. He ate the little book, and it was in his mouth as sweet as honey, and it made his belly bitter. But I also thought about what I talk about when I talk about poor in spirit, poverty of spirit, and richness of soul. I think of people who, I mentioned him for some reason a couple times, but he reminds me of someone who is wealthy, famous, Robin Williams, and then he committed suicide because he's still just miserably unhappy somehow. In the midst of all the wealth, in the midst of the success, in the midst of you couldn't imagine, I have real problems as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I've got a flat tire out there. I'm practically snowed in. I got a frozen drain. I got 2 frozen drains. I can't do laundry. I can't do dishes. Well, I just unclogged the sink in the kitchen for my wife right before the study because we finally got weather that wasn't sub-zero, as most of us in America have been experiencing, right? We get this normally, but this was pretty bad for us up here. We don't usually have our drains freeze. This is not my laundry drain. Anyways, the new drain I put in for the sink, I made a flawed design. That's the way it goes. Anyways, so what I was going to say also, but that poverty of spirit, when someone's full in the spirit, they have everything, right? Like rich people, they have all the, but they still end up miserable because none of that sweetness reaches them anymore. They can't taste the sweetness of it. It's just normal life. I was going to make it, whatever. You don't know, but that's true. They don't appreciate what they have. So when you're full, you don't really want honey. You certainly don't want bitter thing, but you don't even like the sweetest things, that come from nature. Good things like in honeycomb. Hast thou found honey? Well, take heed. Don't eat too much. But to the hungry soul, every bitter thing is sweet. I think that's an interesting inversion of the little book, right? The little book, he swallowed it, and it was sweet in his mouth and bitter in his belly. And this may be somewhat of a key to that. To the hungry soul, every bitter thing is sweet. And I can see that, but it's kind of inverted, isn't it? Because it would almost be every sweet thing is bitter. I mean, it tasted sweet in your mouth, but it went down bitter into your belly. That's always been, I'd rather have you bitter in his mouth, but sweet in his belly. That would be more optimistic. That would also be easier to understand. because that would be exactly in line with this. To the hungry soul, every bitter thing is sweet. So like I could look at the scriptures and say like, well, I'm going to be martyred for the Lord Jesus if I stand up for the truth. If I stand up for the truth, that's a definite possibility. Maybe not. Maybe who knows? Just depends on the generation you live in, the times you live in, the treachery and all that goes on. Who knows how we can see what they want to do. That we can see what they're planning to do. Some people, anyways. Now, how well they'll actually, put their plans forward as far as whether they will rise to the level of stuff that we would look at as, potentially fulfilling the book of Revelation, I don't know. Because like I say, I think most of that comes from elsewhere. It doesn't just come from the deeds of men. There's a lot of stars falling from heaven in the book of Revelation. And that means a lot of heavenly interference, I think. But anyways, there's some sort of spiritual component to that too, I think. Because you get burned out too. Like, I love working on scripture stuff, scripture music, but sometimes like after a while, it's like I got to go do something else because I can't be chained to this chair. So even the sweetness of it becomes something I got to step away with until I'm hungry again. That's true. You can get filled up with the word. I never want to be full, like in that sense, right? I want to always be hungry, ever hungry, just like a new wineskin. I never want to harden into a old wineskin. Even though that's against nature, well, that's what salvation is. The resurrection ain't exactly according to the course of nature either, by the way. So that's all right. As a bird that wandereth from her nest, so is a man that wandereth from his place. That's a kind of that's a little bit of, I don't know what to call it, but it's sort of like know your place. And so that can be kind of tricky because obviously, like Jesus, he was a carpenter or a son of a carpenter or whatever. What was his place in society? Then he wasn't a chief priest. He wasn't a member of the Sanhedrin. They were the ones who decided what religion, they were the scribes and Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. Therefore, you do what they say. The scribes and Pharisees sat in the seat of Moses. Jesus didn't. Well, but he knew to them, he was out of his place. Always remember this, that what man says your place is, you don't have to buy into that. You have a place in God. And so there is a sort of worldly, stay in your place, stay in your station. And here's the thing, if you don't, it's as a bird wandering from the nest. Now that is an analogy I've had to look at. There's a couple places in the Bible where they talk about that wandering bird. We had it in the last chapter, but also I remember in Isaiah when it talks about the children of Moab, the daughters of Moab, as a bird cast out of the nest, so would the daughters be of Moab be before the fords of Arnon. I was recently watching a video of like chickens with their chicks, and the way the chicks wander around outside the nest, like foraging and stuff. Really unmindful. And a lot of times they get picked off by predators like that because they're very, they don't know. And they have instincts to survive, but they got to go eat too, right? And they're tiny, they're small, and they sort of walk around on the ground. If you ever watch them, it's not a particularly, like when chickens are out, like scratching for, looking for scratch, or as they call it, or whatever, they're out feeding, grazing in the grass, looking for bugs, snipping at grass. The pattern they go through, it seems like they just aimlessly wander. It doesn't look like, they don't go like a guy mowing the lawn, where you go on one line and they go around, they go back another line, going around, or whatever. There's some sort of pattern to it. It seems patternless. And therefore it seems like unmindful. And notice it is a man that wandereth from his place. Not necessarily a man that improves himself. Like, for example, Jacob. Jacob would be one, but Joseph was a better example. Joseph, who was enslaved, became second to Pharaoh. He didn't wander from his place. He was given that place. And so that's an important thing also. It reminds me of the thing that was in the Proverbs a couple chapters ago, but also Jesus talked about, where he says, hey, when you go to sit at meat, don't take the highest seat. Sit down in the lower seat, lest you be told, hey, move aside, someone more important than you is going to sit here. Rather, wait for someone to call you and say, hey, what are you doing down there? Come up here. Meaning, there's times when you have an assigned place. You know what I mean? And it may be just even. We have a place, we're supposed to be here. At certain times, we're supposed to be in certain places doing certain things. There's a time for every purpose under heaven. That's what I refer to. And let's look up that word wander. So when you wander away from your purpose, you know what I mean? Because I think that's really, what is the nest? I thought there were a lot of nest references. I always look at these analogies and think they must have been a common cultural, because they come out in the prophets, they come out in the Psalms, they come out in the Proverbs, and of course the New Testament at times, different ones, with analogies to animals, analogies to other things. But the wandering. Out of her nest, so the daughters of Moab shall be at the fords of Arnon. Wandereth Nadad. Yeah, it means just to depart, wander, retreat. What's place? Very simple, standing place. Pretty straightforward translation. Oh, I thought I had you over there. And you can see to retreat, flee, depart, stray, wander, flutter. And here we have makom, a standing place. What would, in this analogy, so like if we were looking at like, what's my nest? It makes me think of the Lord's talking about, O Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets and slayest those that are sent to thee. How often would I have taken you as a mother hen takes her chicks under her wings? And hens do defend their chicks pretty vigorously, and so do the roosters. They get really aggressive. We had a rooster for years that everyone was terrified. This Polish rooster, and he was a scrawny thing. But he was a fighter. He went down fighting in probably the best way. We only found a few feathers. I always said he didn't die. He flew off to chicken heaven. Of course, I'm kidding. Right? Standing place. Well, he might have escaped. I don't know. Retired to the trees. I don't know. We didn't find anything. A few bloody feathers and a few guilty-looking dogs. All right. I don't know what else to say about that. We've said enough. We've said a lot, but I'm not sure. Again, stay in your place is not exactly what I mean, what I think it means. It's a sort of don't wander from your place, like a thoughtless little chick. Like the mindless, do we not have the saying bird-brained? And though birds can be quite intelligent, they're not that intelligent. They can be quite unintelligent, very much so. Try to get one out of your barn. Like you don't even you're just trying to usher it out. It's like, they're in a different level of intelligence. They're smart, but we can't communicate with them. Not very well, not the little ones especially. But anyways, I think of the little chicks getting out of their nest, leaving safety. That's an image of that. Of course, wandering from the nest is leaving the safety of the nest, going out into the world. And a man that wanders from his place is also that. And what I would say is it's not saying forbidding it so much as it's saying be careful. When you leave your place, when you leave your safety zone, you are exposed like a bird to predators and prey. When you don't know where you are and what you're doing anymore, when you're just out of your place, whatever that is, especially in the Lord. Don't think of like what men would impose on you. That's not what I would say this is about. Ointment and perfume rejoice the heart, so doth the sweetness of man's friend heart. Oh, let me go back to it's hard to see it here. Oop, I already did that. There we go. Ointment and perfume rejoice the heart, so doth the sweetness of a man's friend by hearty counsel. I'm going to look up those words, hearty counsel. Probably means like good counsel. Bring you over there, something like that, right? Well, hearty has a very specific meaning in English, so I want to know what it means in Hebrew. I'm going to go hearty. Oh, nefesh. That's soul. I guess hearty, a soulish, a soulful. That might be a good way to put it. This is the word for soul. So, wait, did I do that right? Hearty? That was hearty. Nefesh. Shemen. Quotreth. Perfume would be like incense. Ointment is oil. Oil and incense rejoice the heart. All right. Sweetness of a man's friend. Yeah. So a man, what does the sweetness here mean? Sweetness, literally. I'm not going to bring it up. So, yeah. It makes your friendship sweeter when you get soulful counsel from the heart, from the soul, and from the very depths, which means, I think, authentic. You know what I mean? Like my soul says to you, my inner man. When my inner man speaks to you, that's not my lips deceiving you. That's, if my soul speaks, that's supposed to be the truth. At least as that's authentic me. And soulful counsel from a man's friend makes the friendship sweeter. Giving him, like, from the heart, open and honest advice. And when, and if they're able to use that for, it helps. Thine own friend and thy father's friend. Oh, yeah, there's another one. I thought this was a difficult verse. How much time we got? Oh, we got enough for this. Thine own friend and thy father's friend forsake not. So your own friend and your father's friend forsake not. Neither go to thy brother's house in the day of thy calamity. For better is a neighbor that is near than a brother far off. I think the assumption here is, of course, that the brother is far off, that he's not around. And so, keep your friends. Don't forsake your friend or the friends of your father. Now, this is all assuming these are friends indeed. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, not a secret enemy, right? Don't forsake. Neither go to thy brother's house in the day of thy calamity. Because again, it isn't saying sometimes you go to your neighbor's house. In fact, there was a little subject of the parable of the unjust steward who tried to buy his way into all his neighbor's houses by writing down their debts, the shrewdness of which so impressed his wicked employer that he praised him. But the Lord Jesus said, "Oh no." He said, what did he say precisely? The part he said, where it's clear, I'm going to bring it up because I'm not going to put it on the screen probably, but I just want to quote it correctly. I'm going to Luke 17. Wait, I'm got the wrong chapter. It's 18. Well, that's the unjust. Hold on. Oh, great. I can't remember where it is. I just have to look it up. Have I spelled it right? Yeah. Oh, good. There's only 18 instances of the word steward. I'm going to bring it up on the screen here. Oh, it's Luke 16. How can I forget? It's funny how that happens. If you don't, like I said, if you don't reference it quickly or go over those lists of kings, that's why I said the real knowledge that we need to have in our minds all the time is stuff that's a lot more near to the ground, man. It's how do I deal with my brother? How do I deal with my friend? How do I love my friend and love my enemy? Because it's different. Can't necessarily, you can cast your pearls before your friend and he'll be thanking you. But you cast them before a swine and he may turn and rip you. All right, where's my scripture? Oh yeah, Luke 16. But just what he had said, he that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much. And he that is unjust in the least is unjust also in much. If therefore ye have not been faithful in the unrighteous mammon, who will commit to your trust the true riches? Do you understand that? That's the real meaning. If you have not been faithful in that which is in another man's, who shall give you that which is your own? No servant can serve two masters. You cannot serve God and mammon. I jumped to the end of that. But that's fine. I didn't want the whole thing. Well, like I said, you go to your... But the point was there... I should probably bring it up. He had done this, what we're talking about in the proverb. That's why I reference it, because he goes to his brother's house. In the parable in Luke 16, We have the steward, and he's not going to be steward any longer because he's wasted his master's goods. And he's saying, what shall I do? For my Lord takes away my lordship. I can't work. I'm lazy. And he says, I'm going to make friends. He called every one of his Lord's debtors and said to them, how much do you owe my Lord? And they say, 100 measures of oil. He says, take the bill and write 50. He's wrote down all their debts. He's ripping his Lord off. People will actually take this as an instructive parable, like, this is what we should do. Because they can't cope with the idea of irony or sarcasm, but more irony. How much owest thou? And he said, 100 measures of wheat, and take a bill, write 80. And the Lord, small l, commended the unjust steward because he had done wisely, or shrewdly if you like. For the children of this world are in their generation wiser than the children of light. I've made this mention of this. And here's the ironic statement, because that is false. It's ironic. If you make yourself friends of the mammon of unrighteousness, you won't be received into any everlasting habitations, because God is not like a shrewd worldly master. He counts faithfulness. You got to be faithful in every little thing. I just like referencing that here. Like I said, because there is something of that here. He wants to go to his brother. Don't go to your brother's house in the day of calamity. Make your friends close. Don't make friends of the mammon of unrighteousness. Make real friends, right? Not why would Jesus say mammon of unrighteousness? He makes it quite clear. And then later in that same passage, he says, you cannot serve God and mammon. Mammon of unrighteousness is not for believers. I'm sorry. Don't make your friends of mammon of unrighteousness. He didn't mean that like that. This is disrespectful to the Lord to not listen carefully to what he's saying. I think they disrespect him so much. Oh, that's got to be literal. This has got to be this way. Oh, you're not going to listen. Okay, I get it. Better is a neighbor that is near than a brother far off. It's good to have friends close by. I'm glad for my friends close by. I'm not good at making friends. I made one, and my kids made friends with his kids. And they're good friends. So my father's friends, in a sense, they have not forsaken. It's wise. When your father makes friends, to make friends with your father's friends and his sons and daughters, whatever. Because there is good, it is good. It's good to have friends. It's useful. When you have calamity, not that I particularly like to go to friends in my calamity, to tell you the truth. Because I guess I feel like I don't want to impose myself on them, But, sometimes you have no choice, I guess. My son, whatever. I'd be more likely to just go hungry than tell people I needed food. I'd just be doing that. I'll just go fasting and the Lord will provide. Be wise and make my heart glad, that I may answer him that reproacheth me. Be wise and make my heart glad. Yeah, anyone that, I think that's true. I'm tempted to pride, as I say. My sons and my daughter make my heart glad. And, if someone were to reproach me, I'm like, I have raised 7 sons. All my adult sons are gainfully employed and diligent, hardworking, moral, morally upright, and 100%. I know they have faults, but their sins are few. And they were well raised and wise. And they make my heart glad. Like I said, it nearly tempts me to pride, except I know that ultimately I only followed the Lord. And that the Lord blessed me with children that were workable, and he blessed me with the knowledge to raise them well. And now, when someone reproaches me, I don't feel anything. Like as far as like my position in the world, I've done things and accomplished things that a lot of people can't say they did, which is when they raise their kids that they did it in any competent sort of way. And it's one of the things like that is supposed to be prerequisites for leadership, even in the church. A man having raised his children in subjection. I say it's funny you get pastors with babies. Pastors with babies? What the training they give them in seminary is in no way preparation, and it does not give them the wisdom that years will. I think nothing's more ironic than a young pastor. I have nothing but disdain for such things. I mean, let no man despise your youth, but I will despise your lack of experience, especially if it shows. Timothy was like 40. Some people despise my youth, okay? And I'm 50. You youngin', I've been called, well, it was kind of I kind of found it funny. A guy called me old man as we were about to get into a fist fight. All right, sorry. I didn't get into a fist fight, though, so there we go. I usually don't. And I try not to get in those situations, but some people just are dirtbags, Sorry. When the wicked show their head in public, I always like to just step on their neck, let them know I'm around. Because like I said, I don't care what, they say you want to rebel against the U.S. government, you need nuclear weapons. No, I only need the word of God. It's much more powerful than your nukes. If you have a wise son, it makes your father's heart glad, and also you can answer him that reproaches you. And as far as like you have an answer, maybe not like, well, it's not like I just say that all the time, but I do know that. It's like, for me, it's like, it's hard to reproach me as a man. Like I did the song One Ball Man. For years, I kept that secret. None of my friends knew. I told my cousins, and that's why I said I told all my friends. I told my friends, and they told all my other friends, because it was my cousins. Then when I made friends at school, though, I never told nobody, because I wised up. I didn't want to be called Paul One Ball through every day of school for the rest of my life, so I didn't. But let's say someone could reproach me about that. Now I am beyond reproach. Oh, you one ball, you're not even a man. It's like, really? I'm 6'3", I'm 230 pounds. I could probably wrap you up like a pretzel, and I've got 7 sons that could do the same. Or once the rest of them are grown up. I don't feel any, my sons make me feel the man. That's for sure. No one can reproach my manhood. I mean, they could try, but I don't feel it. They won't touch me. It's hard to put a man to shame with wise sons. When you have wise sons, it makes you feel the man. I can tell you that. No, it does. I feel the man because of the boys, the young men, especially when they become men. You see the result of all that time and the youth and strengthening them and teaching them. And then they emerge into the world wise. That's enough to make me proud if I was vulnerable to that sort of thinking. Take his garment that is surety for a stranger and take a pledge of him for a strange woman. Yeah, we're over time. We've actually encountered this verse almost identical to this earlier in the Proverbs. I don't remember exactly where it was, but you may remember. He that will pledge for a stranger. Oh, I'll be this dude that you don't know who is ungodly and has swastikas and pentagrams tattooed all over him. Whatever, just signs of evil. You're like, right? Because remember, stranger also means foreign. It can mean a strange woman might just be a local woman who has forsaken God and taken on strange customs that are strange to the Commonwealth of Israel. And this was always an issue. They brought in these strange gods and strange customs, and they themselves became strange, because a Jew is not one who is one outwardly, but one inwardly, as Paul taught. And that was always true. Just look at the distinction between Jacob and Esau. Jacob have I loved, Esau have I hated. One was chosen, one was not. So he that will pledge, who will make sure the debt of a stranger or someone who's, take his garment, take a pledge, because he is probably, you're going to need, what it's saying is this is probably not going to go well. Especially in their culture. We don't really have that today, right? Nobody comes to you and says, hey, will you guarantee my loan? It's kind of like co-signing. I mean, I would co-sign for my children. But not that, because it's not a stranger. Be sure to, for a friend, you'll smart for it maybe. I don't know. Sometimes you take risks, but it's saying that's risky behavior. That's basically the thing. Get a pledge. Take his garment. You need to get something, like we would say today, get it in writing. Like for example, here's a good example of a modern interpretation of this, right? You go to a car dealership and the salesman's like, "Oh, this is great. Yeah. He's all surety for what the transaction you're about to make." You know what I mean? He's all over it. He's pledging everything's going to be fine. And that's in a sense like he's interacting as a third party between you and what you're interacting with. I don't know. And like I said, to some degree, sometimes that's a trustworthy interaction. Sometimes it's not. So like quintessentially, used car dealers used to be considered pretty shady, right? As far as they sell you a lemon, all this and stuff. It's not so prevalent anymore. They tend to like to have the cars they roll off their lots work, but I'm sure there are still places that are pretty sketchy. But that's one way I could think of. And for a strange woman, I guess the same thing. Someone's going to be surety for some dubious person. There's reason to be suspicious. Just because we're Christians doesn't mean we have to be gullible and naive. Be wise as serpents, but harmless as doves. We want to be simple concerning evil, but wise concerning righteousness, or whatever. Is that the way it says? Well, in the sense of it shouldn't be like, we don't want to be machinating evil thoughts. Let them be simple. Like I had an urge, what I mean? That's where evil should live and die. I wanted to do it, but then I said, no, the Lord doesn't want me doing that. Let your evil be a simple, straightforward question of, I had a temptation and I sinned or something like that. Not like I thought about it and I planned and I schemed. And that is not good, man. Not good at all. All right, so we'll start off next time with this verse also that's an interesting verse. I could see how that's true, right? Of course it's all true, but the point is to understand. And sometimes the plain meaning of it seems like hard to understand. And that's why we come and study. We're going to look into see if there's any clues from the Hebrew. Maybe we'll look at another translation because, I don't know. Well, this seems pretty straightforward. There was another one coming up that I thought, what was it? There was some really odd verse in here somewhere. Well, this one was, I got this completely. I thought that was interesting. Oh, well, whatever. Which bewrayeth itself. Contentious. Oh, yeah, I remember that. All right, well, we'll begin at verse 14 tomorrow. Thanks for joining me. We'll be back again tomorrow. I love to talk about the Word of God. It is, in fact, studying it is what will help us grow a closer relationship with it. It's only enhanced my relationship and understanding, giving me more patience. When you understand the Word of God, it helps you to endure the difficulties of life. Anyways, remember the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. And until next time. With all